We are live. All right. So, welcome everybody. This is God, what episode are we up to here, Michelle? Episode 33. 33. The Web 3x3 podcast, episode 33. This is June 28th, 2023. It is 4 p.m. on the Eastern Seaboard. Today's episode, whatever happened to Web 3? Web 3 adoption has been slow, right? There are two main reasons why, which Michelle and I will explore. And we are not joined today by our third wheel, our third leg of the stool. Your ops guy, Mike, is not able to join us, unfortunately. So Michelle and I will be carrying the duties. But Michelle, quick hello.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm remembering we are on Twitter Spaces and LinkedIn as well this evening.
That's right.
Are we on YouTube as well? I don't know if we are.
Yep, we are also on YouTube.
And YouTube, right. Okay.
So for those who don't know about the social media platforms, I am trying to get us onto Instagram Live, and apparently IG will not let you do live streaming, Michelle. They have to be pre-recorded and posted. They're not used to our dynamism, apparently.
We are too hot for them. That's really what we're talking about here.
We're going to go through a couple of quick stories today, and then I guess if folks want to get into it on Twitter, on Spaces afterwards, we'll be able to take some Q&A, hear some questions. So we're going to start off, Michelle, with your article here. Michelle found a great one. Web 2 kind of sucks. So why aren't people using Web 3 platforms? This is a piece off of Blockworks, and the basic of the story is that most Web 3 congregates on the Web 2 platforms right now, despite the well-known Web 2 flaws. Right? Web 3's economic motivators attract negative behavior, inauthentic engagement, and paid shills. This is the article saying this, and Michelle, I'm sure you would agree. So to get users off these established platforms will require a, quote, value add that frankly doesn't exist on Twitter. The article discusses at length how Twitter is really the closest we've come so far to a Web 3 environment, but clearly it's still a social platform run as a centralized Web 2 thing. So, Michelle, I'll let you share some thoughts on it. I'll share some as well. And we're going to comment on how this is holding back Web 3.
And just as a reminder before I start to everyone, I have put the link to the first article in the thread for this chat so people can go back and have a look if they're listening later as well. So it's an interesting thing, isn't it, that we have had a couple of apps try and sort of become Web3 social. So we've got Lens Protocol, if people know about that, and Farcaster is one of the other ones. I know that people have been using, oh goodness me, it's just gone out of my mind. The one starting with an M, Mastodon.
Yeah, Mastodon, right.
But I'm not exactly sure how Web3 that is compared to the other two. But essentially the problem you've got is that everyone in Web3 has built an audience in Web2. And that was the way they were able to get their followings and, hype up their 10,000 PFP drop collection. And we'll talk about the current Azuki one a bit later, newsflash. But it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? In order to become popular and be a Web3 authority, you needed to build, your following on Web2 platforms. Now, Twitter used to be the place that everyone in Web3 would go to and want to, hang out and be there, and that's how they built, their big followings and built their communities and stuff like that. And unfortunately, Elon has, sort of made that quite a bit more difficult for people. But that said, probably the biggest thing I think at the moment in the last, 6 to 8 months has really been the downturn in crypto and the FTX saga, and it's the numbers of people just aren't there anymore at the moment.
Maybe that was the getting rid of the right people, though. Let me show, those are the wrong folks that were in that Web3 gold rush, if you will.
True. I mean, all the crypto bros that are now AI bros, they've moved to the AI verse, perhaps not the
Right.
crypto verse. But like I think the problem is that we haven't had someone yet invent a Web3 social media platform that everyone's gone, wow, this is fantastic. Everyone go there. Because if someone did, they would. Because ultimately, people don't like FOMO. So if there's lots happening in a particular thing, I'm sure everyone here who's listened for a long time on the different episodes we've had would remember when Clubhouse first launched and how you had to get an invite, and it was only iPhone holders to start with, um, and then like people who had iPhones, and then you were able to eventually get an invite if you were an Android user, etc. And the hype around that was amazing. And they had, rooms where there were hundreds of thousands of people listening to, Elon Musk or, someone come up to the stage to talk. Gary Vaynerchuk used to be in there all the time. So we need something like that, I guess, in Web3. And no one's invented it yet.
So I want to comment on that, Michelle. You raised a great point. There was a cachet to Clubhouse and specifically to being invited. I'm sure anyone here that was in Clubhouse will remember who it was that invited them in, where they got their invitation from. I know I do. And to this day, I'm still grateful for that person. Meanwhile, the thing is kind of fallen by the wayside. Twitter Spaces has, demoralized Clubhouse. But there's no cachet around a Web3 platform right now. There's no, oh, you're in there. How do I get in there? And I think you raised a good
Yeah.
point there. I hadn't thought about that. That you get people in when they feel that it's almost a sense of FOMO, really. And the FOMO for
Yes,
Clubhouse, which is missing from Web3, is what you just described when a Gary Vaynerchuk or a Grant Cardone or some big name like Elon Musk stepped into a room, because you never knew, right? It was the
that's right.
synchronicity that you were in there at the same time as someone else, or some major name popped up. And of
Yeah.
course, a brush with greatness is really what that represented from average folks.
And, you had to be invited on stage, like you weren't if you just went into a room, you weren't automatically able to speak. The people running it had to invite you up and they'd go, "Oh, we see Gary Vaynerchuk's joined. Gary, come up and have a, word." I mean, those people think that, they won lotto basically when that happened.
It did, though.
Um,
Those rooms would be 10,000 people deep soon.
yeah, that's right. And word spread pretty quickly that Gary was chatting in the, blah, blah, blah room. And there isn't an app yet that's been created in a Web3 environment that has that same feel to it. So at the moment, what we're seeing, I think, is that everyone's sticking with Twitter, but reluctantly, you know, even, with a, "Oh god, do I really have to?" But at the moment, there's nowhere else. And that's part of the problem we've got now. So Twitter's kind of, people are there, but they're not there, or people are half there. They're retweeting old tweets, or there are some people still doing it, but like even like the numbers of followers you get, people with tens of thousands of followers are losing thousands of followers a week because either people are leaving or they've scraped all the bots, or I mean, and I'm not saying that if you had 10,000 bots following you, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but ultimately people look at your profile and they go, oh, like at one stage, even only a couple of months ago, I had almost 900 followers on Twitter, and I'm down to 820 now. Like, I haven't done anything different.
Well, you should buy
Um,
more like you were doing.
yeah. Yes. All those offers you get in your DMs, I should take one of them up on it.
Yeah.
But like I mean, you kind of look at that and you go, well, I've been working really hard in Twitter and I've been doing all the right things and I've been doing what they say I should do, except my follower count's going backwards, which ultimately people look at you and go, oh, well, they're not serious. I mean, I was trying really hard to get to 1,000 people. But, ultimately, there needs to be that kind of a thing. Now, will a Meta because they're now trying to, there's talk of them challenging Twitter's supremacy by bringing out some kind of an Instagram clone that is more like Twitter. Don't know.
But can I comment on that, Michelle?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, Twitter nailed the functionality copy of Clubhouse, right? Well, functionality wise, it's got everything Clubhouse had, yet it doesn't have that cachet. So when Zuckerberg's outfit tries to copy whatever, I have no doubt they'll get the technology right. The only way they're going to really clash with Twitter right now, it looks like, is in the octagon. But I don't know. I feel like this is more than just a technology conversation. There's a cultural pop thing. And I realized that Clubhouse was driven at the time by lockdown and people's need for connection. That's not there right now. So I
No.
don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
But if you think about, if you have right now, you have one login for Facebook and Instagram. What if it was the same for this new thing?
So you're talking, right? This is back.
Seamless.
Yeah.
Seamless. No, so they're lowering the friction that there might be to people joining, at least people giving it a go. So that's
Right.
probably an important thing.
Interesting. All right. Well, I do think that the Web3 kind of sucking is true. Right? The article doesn't actually give any concrete advice as to what Web3 should be doing to get people on board. Right? It makes the point that until the folks come on board, there'll be no one on board, which is the argument. And I feel like tautology like this doesn't get us over. But the reality is, it needs to be a spark right now, and at the moment, it's not. It's bigger than just the technology features, and I think that's all people are thinking about. So, you get into what does Bitcoin represent? It wasn't just a way to buy pizza; it was a representation of a pushback on government authoritative money.
Yeah.
The Web3 the representations behind it haven't really bled through enough that people are willing to use it and overcome the friction. So the article is inconclusive. I agree with it. Right now, as we'll talk about later, we're still seeing the paid shill activity, the NFT growth still rears its ugly head, unfortunately. The Web3 is a bit of an uphill challenge right
And I think the other thing to consider right now is when you look around, even the big names in the Web3 space, Binance, Coinbase, all of those, they're laying off people. So there is less money circulating in terms of developers and, innovation, because, creativity and innovation come when people are in rooms together and talking about things and whatever. A lot of the things with Web3 companies as well is that everyone's remote. Very rarely do they all come together. And we know from traditional business, whether you like it or not, that, having your team do team building days and be in a room together, or, having lunch together, or having coffee and all of that around the, or water around the water cooler in the kitchen, actually creates things. And there's a reason why Google had the Googleplex with table tennis tables and people being able to order a latte and all of that stuff, because they knew that was how people came up with creative ideas. And so Web3 kind of doesn't have that. So they need to find other ways to generate that creativity and curiosity in people.
You know what I think is a factor, though, Michelle, and you got me thinking. With Google, those are people who have similar ideas, right? And clearly in the Web3 community, we have similar ideas. Right? Everyone wants to be independent, and all the things are Web3. There is no leadership at the moment in Web3. The reason inside of a community, and I'm going to use Gary Vaynerchuk as an example, but any community of folks, there's a head. There's someone who represents Elon Musk.
Yeah.
We're going to Mars. There needs to be someone speaking the speak at the visionary level. It's called vision casting in the CEO world.
Yes.
And there isn't. And I'm not criticizing it. I mean, we've run a web podcast. We're just as qualified as anyone else. But right now, there's no voice of success laying out the groundwork of where we're going as a Web3. And I think that until there is a Jeff Bezos or Warren Buffett, we're not going to get there because people don't really understand it. Tech nerds do, marketing nerds like us do. It's
And the thing with the tech nerds is that they're not very good at communication. Sorry, Mike.
I've got the entire business on.
Exactly. So, I mean, you're right. There needs to be some luminary, doesn't there? Some person that is going to be a standout, shining, guiding light to, Pied Piper us all along on this journey towards, Web3 utopia. And at the moment, there really isn't anyone to do that. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that either.
All right, so I'm going to take us into story number 2. That's okay. But
and I shall
will
put the link into Twitter for people if they're following. So keep going.
Great.
Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. All right, so story number 2 comes out of Decrypt. This is my pick, and this connects to what we're talking about, Michelle. The article is entitled "Nobody Knows What Web3 Is." People globally understand what the term "quote unquote" Web3 actually means. So they did a poll of over 15,000 people recently across 15 countries. We're talking international. 24% of these folks were very familiar with the term Web3. 37% were not. 67% of these people do want more ownership over their online content, and 79% want more control over their online identity. So what Web3 represents is very popular, but in Europe, Japan, and South Korea, they express the most skepticism around crypto in general and this whole technology. And Africa, Latin America are the most accepted. And the article, it outlines very briefly, but I do buy into this, that the places in the world where inflation is raging the highest and government trust in government money is the lowest, which would be Latin America. That's where crypto is the most accepted. Now, crypto and Web3, while related, are not the same. So I think there is a concept here around education. This is back to the vision casting comment. Leadership of Web3 doesn't exist at the moment, which, I mean, ironically, the definition of what Web3 is decentralized. And so until we get beyond platitudes, we should have control of our identity. Money should not be controlled by the government. Like, there's a lot of shoulds. But as I think it's Tony Robbins, it's one of my favorite lines, you should all over yourself. Like, the reality is,
shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Right. People don't understand, why does this matter? And that's the crucial missing moment. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, we have talked about it a number of times, haven't we? It's hard. The terminology is hard. The words we use are hard. In fact, I think it's not that the words are hard. I think that the words we use exclude people from understanding what it is. So when people are talking about non-fungible tokens and, immutable and blockchain and interoperability and all of that, like the average person on the street is like, huh? So, those sorts of things are barriers to entry, and we've talked about that lots before. I think it's interesting you put up in our chat earlier today about the 30 newest trends in business right now, and in the top 30, Web3 isn't mentioned in the survey at all. AI content detector. I don't know what the Tome app is, but there's quite a few different things that are not anything to do with the space that we're talking about here, other than perhaps Beehive, which came in very low, which is a newsletter platform at 21. But like it's a big problem. But if you think about it, in the early 2000s, who knew what a website was? Like, who knew? You had to know PHP and HTML, and if you could not code, you could not put anything up on the internet. And so that was a big learning curve. Now we've got apps where people can just drag and drop content and pictures and type a few words and press a button and their website's up in 10 minutes.
So, Michelle, to that point, we've talked about this. The AI tools that are everywhere now and growing daily are going to
Mhm.
make Web3 a lot more accessible. This is not because I want it
Yes,
to, it's just that it solves that
it will.
friction.
Yep.
So I think that the jury's still out. We also had discussed earlier, we'll revisit this later, but the Web3 adoption, the closest thing we're seeing, believe it or not, is traditional finance. The crypto, and I'm not talking the crypto bros, I mean institutional traders like BlackRock and JP Morgan, they're all working on blockchains now. They're like building a common protocol. They're all working on how will crypto assets be actually transacted in the traditional world. So that is completely Web3, what they're building. Now, you could argue the tenets of decentralization because they're building visibility and yeah, user identification. But the reality is blockchain is taking root there and in the gaming world first. So finance, gaming, entertainment. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, your average Schmo does not have any idea what Web3 really is, how they can benefit from it, or even that it's a thing. Like there's now Web3 marketing is a separate division. It's a whole different discipline of marketing.
Yeah.
This is where we need Mike here, but Mike often uses the example of if you're a local vitamin shop and you want to run a joint program with the local gymnasium in your town, there's total Web3 coupon accessibility here to help support each other's
Yes.
businesses. It's
Yeah.
it's a whole new avenue of marketing that no one's given thought to.
Yes. It's true. And what's it going to take to have people start to do that? I mean, obviously, having the bigger brands like Nike and Adidas and, BMW,
For the Americans in
Adidas,
the room, that would be Adidas.
Adidas, um, BMW, Starbucks, by having them come into Web3, that's a good thing. However, none of them are using the technology that those of us that are entrenched and in the weeds in Web3 keep insisting on using. And that's a problem.
But I think that we touched on this earlier, Michelle. I think the answer lies in the question. It's going to be that sense of FOMO. When companies feel like they're losing a potential avenue of future customers,
Yes.
well, that's when they're going to say, well, you know what, this might be worth a shot. In the world of finance, traditional finance, my old world of Wall Street, they're coming at it now because they have to. They realize they're losing money because the DeFi world is eating their lunch. So out of FOMO, traditional finance is now building out all the architecture. That's going to be what will happen in the big business world, where Starbucks has doubled their sales because they've got an online hangout program, and Dunkin' Donuts doesn't. Well, Dunkin' Donuts does, but I'm making the point.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, the rest of the industry is like, wait a minute, well,
Yeah.
why aren't we doing this?
Then Krispy Kreme go, hang on,
Right. That's a
they're
great
they're
example.
cutting they're cutting our lunch, so we've got to get on board now too, so we can take a piece of it. I mean, it's the same as like when if there's a Walmart down the road from you, why did Kmart open in the plot across the road, for example? Like they do it because they offer similar things. They're not different.
Yeah.
They offer the same types of stuff. And that what they're trying to do is they're trying to think, well, people are going to come to Walmart anyway. They're going to look across the road and go, oh, hey, Kmart's over there. Let's drive over to Kmart because they've got XYZ that we want. So that's why they're doing that. And that's how we can perhaps attract more mainstream businesses into Web3 with that. And, I guess that they're going to be the ones that create the first lot of FOMO.
Right. Right. I totally agree. By the way, I want to acknowledge Caleb and Linda in the audience. Thank you guys for joining us. Caleb, I see your
And
comments here.
and Jim's in Twitter too. Hi,
Oh, Jim.
Jim.
Good
So
old
great
Jim.
to see you. We've missed you, Jim. You haven't been around for a while.
So Jim has been putting out his own set of content, which is actually
Yes,
quite
he
interesting
has.
for those who care to give him a follow. It's worth your time. I think
Yeah.
that I'll take this opportunity to say real fast that this episode is not intended to be financial advice in any way, shape, or form because we are going to opine on that. And also, we're sponsored by Traveling Through History, which is a new newsletter for people who love history and love to travel. This is on the contentmarketingqueen.com. Savvy Traveler, Savvy Travel History. Is that what it
Travel.
is?
Yes. Savvy Travel Historian. It's on the
Historian.
homepage link at the top, so you can. So yeah, so I launched it a month ago now. I've done 4 editions, which is pretty good. That's consistent. Apparently on Substack, I'm better than 55% or 45% of the creators on Substack that have done more than 4 issues, which is pretty insane if you think about that. But anyway,
Awesome.
yeah.
But
And so Substack, but I also do, unsurprisingly, 2 Web3 options. So paragraph.xyz and mirror.xyz. And I'm Savvy Travel Historian on both of those as well. So this is a bit of an experiment of how I can help people bridge the gap between Web 2 and Web 3. But more on that to come.
since we're in the newsletter segment of our show, apparently, I got a comment that Caleb has mentioned that he's working on a newsletter as well, Web3 Wednesdays, which he says will feature the Web3 by 3 podcast. And that would make
Woohoo!
him
Thanks,
our
Caleb.
most handsome listener. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. He's probably the youngest listener as well.
Caleb's got his finger on the pulse, though.
He has. He definitely has.
All right, so I'll take us into our last story of the week. This is Mike's pick, even though Mike isn't able to join us. He found us a story out of Japan, believe it or not. Crypto turmoil in the U.S. could be a boon for Japan. And the article discusses, as we have at length, U.S. regulators continue to crack down on the crypto industry. So Japan is now looking to grow its presence in the crypto space. They're in good company. For those who are following the show, you've got Abu Dhabi, you've got the Caribbean. There's a lot of players who want to own the crypto world. This is Gary Gensler of the SEC is quoted in the article as saying, quote, "We already have digital currency. It's called the U.S. dollar." So Japan right now believes that they have the legal framework for crypto that's been in operation for years. Their crypto exchanges in Japan register with the Japanese government. They submit annual reports. They keep the customer funds separate, and they verify user identity, which the government's always like. So, Michelle, I guess we'll start with you.
A couple of interesting things in that article is that of all the FTX subsidiaries, the people in Japan are the ones that are getting most of their money back, which is a really interesting thing because the regulations and the controls that they had required them to actually keep large proportions of the money, banked effectively, so that they were able to return people's funds. They still have issues, don't they? Because of cryptocurrencies at the moment aren't deemed the same as capital gains. So the tax rates on that are something insane like 50%, as opposed to, I think it's 20. Was it? I just have to grab the article. I was putting it into, 20. So 55% is the maximum tax rate for individuals for profits on the sale of virtual currencies, because they consider it to be miscellaneous income, whereas capital gains and dividends, stocks and stuff is only a fixed 20%. So, obviously that's a big disincentive for people to have those sorts of things. But I mean, this is kind of, developing a bit of a theme, isn't it, that we have talked about a number of times, where different different jurisdictions are setting themselves up so that they can take business from companies who find the US regulatory framework or lack thereof of controls, or ability to, or clarity on what's going on, to move elsewhere. So we've seen it with Dubai, Hong Kong, the UK, even the EU's passed regulation this week on, cryptocurrencies and things, and now Japan. I think that we are going to see more of it. And surely eventually, come on, Mark, your guys really got to get themselves organized. What are you doing over there, man? Come on.
I don't want to get conspiracy here, but you know me, coming out of Wall Street, this is about printing money. The U.S. dollar being the reserve currency of the world is printed quite a bit lately, and we're seeing inflation. I think that crypto prevents you from doing that. So anything that stops the government from being able to print is not going to be supported. Right now, they're trying to figure out how do they shut it down without losing the entire industry out of America. And that's the point of this article. Japan is like making a play for it. You've got Portugal. I know last week or 2 weeks ago we discussed Switzerland. They're all working
Yeah.
at it. Uh,
Yeah.
Even believe it or not, like Germany, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, these are all real crypto players that are either making money available, like literally they'll help you fund your company if you're going to bring it over there and base it out of
Yeah.
there, or they've got lowest lower taxation. Either one of those two, or both in the case of, like, not in the case of Japan, but in the case of Abu Dhabi. So what they're
Yeah.
doing is they're literally bribing companies to go in there and set up crypto shops,
They're throwing money at people, let's be honest. That's what they're doing.
which
Billions of dollars.
which is the exact opposite of what the Americans are doing here in the United States. So right now, I
Yep.
don't know how it will go any more than anyone else does, but if things continue as they are, money will just migrate to where it's welcome. That's how capitalism works, and that
Yes.
means out of the U.S. I would hate to say that as an American. I'm just calling what falls and strikes here. That's what I think.
Yeah. And what will happen, I think, then is that there'll be this game of catch up, won't there? And then America will want to try and lure people back, or get companies to return, and that's a much harder game, isn't it, to play than when you're already in the driver's seat to
They're
actually
not going to
assist
lure
people
people
to
back.
stay.
They're
No,
not.
that I'm sure they won't. They'll try, but I don't think that they necessarily will. That's a bit like, the amount of companies that have left London as their headquarters since Brexit is insane. And even if they were to rejoin the EU, I don't think they're coming back either.
I've moved my 10,000 back office operations out of London into, Dublin. I am not going to then a few years later up and bring it
Mm,
all the way back across. It's not going to happen.
no, it's not. No, agreed.
All right.
Agreed.
So the final story will come in, but you threw at us last minute, Michelle. I'll let you talk about. For those who aren't familiar with Azuki, the old NFT crap of people get rich quick and trying to just sell their jam it down throats and make money, the money grab, as we like to talk about. This is
Yeah.
that. I'll let you give the
Yeah.
quick walkthrough, Michelle. You know more about this than I do.
So essentially, Azuki it was a 10,000 PFP generative art collection launched in January 2022. It's very Japanese anime inspired type artwork. So, if your kids are into Yu-Gi-Oh or those sorts of shows, it's kind of like that, Digimon, all of those sorts of things. And really well received. The floor price on the current, like the original collection, was around 8 ETH as the floor price. It's been very successful. People got in early and they made lots of money out of them if you sold them and trade them. So they made an announcement that they were going to drop a collection called Elementals. And it was supposed to be, they're building a metaverse, Azuki, and it was supposed to be sort of elements like water and fire and earth and, those sorts of things. And the collections were supposed to be within those, like representing one of those particular elements. And then you would take that into the metaverse with your original as I keep saying, wanting to say Azuki character, and then you can do things and play around and whatever. That's kind of how it was sold. Each current Azuki holder was airdropped one of the new collection,
Elementals.
one of the Elementals collection, and they have another collection called Beans with a Z at the end, and they also gave them an opportunity to buy early. Anyway, and then what they did was, this new collection was 20,000. They airdropped to the original collectors one, and then they sold the rest, but they did a pre-sale for Beans and Azuki current holders. So for 10 minutes, they were able to buy this next collection. Now, this is me going to get up on my high horse, my hobby horse from a few weeks ago. These were mystery boxes, loot boxes, revealed later boxes. So People paid 2 ETH for each of these, didn't know what they were getting. They did no reveal on the artwork, no sneak peeks, no nothing prior to the minting of these things. So they, in 15 minutes, they made 38 million US dollars by selling all of these to their current community. So we're talking Azuki and Beans holders.
That's $38 in 15 minutes. That's actually more than we make in sponsorships here.
How do they do it? I just don't know. So yeah, so essentially, everything I guess was fine until the mint reveal, and basically what they've done is just downgraded their original collection. So, you know, there's characters that had a t-shirt on in the original collection don't have a t-shirt on in the Elementals collection. So there's stuff like that that's been going on. And it's basically blown up in their face in the last 24 hours because people are saying, like, you know, it's FUD, you know, it's a rug pull, they've made all this money. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about too with these original PFP collections and all of that is that there's zero utility on these. It's just an image. It's just I mean, you might be able to use it later in their metaverse, but I mean, you know, you and I talked, didn't we, before the show about, you know, Meta with all their billions haven't been able to come up with something concrete of some metaverse that we're all going to be living in one day. So how is the Azuki people going to be able to do that? You know, there's been some amazing comments, and, you know, we talked about this too, that, you know, effectively what they did was a Series B raising, wasn't it? And what they did was they raised money from within their community. You know, like they didn't go to a VC or a whatever.
You say raised money.
Yeah.
Yeah, Linda makes a good point about, was there any whitewashing? Yeah. So there's an old expression, you can fool some of the people all the time, all the people some of the time, but, you know, you can't all the people. We've gone through the phase of fooling all the people all the time. That's over. And at this point now, you've got a very wise going on out there, NFT who are very skeptical and for good reason. So them, I don't know what their game is, but this was the wrong time to be sticking your hand in the bear trap. You've destroyed your community's support, if that's really the case.
Yeah, and I mean, they've come out today and they put out a tweet saying that, you know, everything's challenging and, you know, we're trying to open up the garden and, you know, today we missed the mark. You know, the mint process was hectic. The PFPs feel similar.
That was the argument, though, Michelle, that it was the minting process was not up to our standards. That's not the same thing as saying we've.
Yeah. But no, but I mean, the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? Both the original Azuki, PFP, the Beans collection, and now the Elementals. The first two are 50% of what their price was before this drop. And the Elementals are trading at about 1.7 to 1.8 ETH. So 2 ETH was what they'd minted at. So they're below. So everybody who bought them's underwater. But essentially, one of the reasons they said for doing this was that they wanted to open up the community more because, you know, 8 ETH for an OG Azuki PFP, you know, NFT is really expensive. Like most people can't afford that. I mean, there's been an argument that 2 ETH is still expensive. That's what, $3,600 to buy an unseen, unknown looking loot box, which is my hobby horse. Because the thing is, if people had seen the artwork, no one would have bought them.
I'm going to try to share this screen if I could show this to folks. This will be a new one. Let's see if this works. I want to show a picture of what these two elementals look like compared to what they're being compared to. So,
yeah.
Tell me if you can see this on screen.
Yes.
So I'm pulling this off of Twitter. This is essentially the old and the new. They're supposed to be a completely different collection. Clearly, they seem a little similar.
There's there in the left, the girl is flipping a coin and her hair's a bit pinker. In the one on the right, she doesn't have a coin and her hair's light pink and not a nice sort of bright pink. So
I'd
yeah,
pay 38 million for that, the difference there.
yeah. You know, people have like they're being savaged on Twitter. And you know, the thing is, we've talked about this a lot, haven't we? You know, the goodwill of your community, you know, like constantly stabbing your community in the back is just not a great thing. And it's the death of a project. Like, the other thing too is that my understanding of, I had a brief look at it. I'll put in the article that I'll share with you from Web3 Academy, which is really good, by Kyle Reedhead. Kyle was a speaker at CEX this year when we were in Cleveland together. And he talks about the breakdown of holders, and the Azuki collection has a huge amount of whales. So there's like 74.4% of the holders are only one or two, but they're, you know, the people who have more than 2 NFTs is 13.5%, and they're down to, like, you know, a small amount of wallets. They hold, like, you know, 20% of the total. So this is kind of like, people are sort of saying, well, like, did you do this just so the whales could all get, you know, get a bit more money and get richer? But, you know, interestingly, the 5% royalty on both of the collections, you know, they're raking into it. They've raked in, you know, nearly $750,000 in, you know, however long it is, just on the royalties of sales. So yeah, it's an interesting thing.
I think Linda Ray gets the award for summing this up best. That's nuts, but more of the same.
Yeah.
I feel like the more things change, and we wonder why Web3 doesn't catch, right? These people, once these idiots are gone for good, we move forward. And people buy it. And Caleb, you know why people are buying? Because people are greedy. That's what this comes down to. Like, no one's buying these things on the hope that, or because they love Japanese anime that much. They're buying them because they think it's going to be a hot thing and they can make a buck off it. So I don't know what it takes to take these folks out of the market, but this is typical of every mania, right? This is a slow-mo mania, no different from the Great Depression run-up in 1929. This is, people have to be afraid enough that they're not willing to buy into the new thing. And I don't think we get there yet. We're clearly not there yet, right? So if these will happen again, slower and fewer of, but we're in the phase of the cycle where people aren't broken yet. All right.
Yeah.
On that high note,
it's interesting, isn't it? Oh yeah, that was a high note.
I'm going to say that's all we had for this week. Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse under your right. I want to thank everyone for listening, the regulars especially, guys. You make the show happen. We do it for you guys because we enjoy it, and we're grateful for your presence. We try to get as many comments in as possible. If you guys want to chit chat on Twitter, share a thought, or tomatoes, we're going to go have a little conversation now. Next week we'll be back regular time. Mike will be with us, and I'm thinking about, Michelle, this is going to be for you now. I'm thinking I should start organizing these topics earlier enough ahead of time that we can advertise them a week ahead. Right? I'm thinking about the old
won't be as breaking news then.
It won't be as breaking news, but we can target a topic, and, you know, like next week we're going to talk about such and such. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And also too, you know, if our audience want to send questions to us or topics that they'd like us to talk about, then we can do that as well. Hit us up on at Web3x3 on Twitter. And, you know, we can bring up things that people want to know about or want to talk about and give our point of view as well. We've got
things a little behind the scenes is we always wrangle every week about topics. Like, we each pick our topics and we try to figure out the themes, but we're always open to conversation. It's interesting and fun. Know that you guys have a voice if you want, and in that degree, we would ask if you could give us a follow if you like or are interested in doing so. Support the show at Web3x3 is the LinkedIn handle. It's Web?
Yeah.
It's Web3BY3, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Not an X.
Right. What we're planning on doing is building out the show a little bit, and the purpose of the show is educational, right? We're not selling anything. This is not a lead gen for something else. We are trying to help educate communities around how Web3 can be used in a business sense, how you, in your business, the creator economy especially, can leverage these technologies as a marketing thing. You can turn, as Mike would say, marketing costs into marketing revenue. And so our goal here is honestly just open conversation. So we thank you guys for taking the time to join.
Yeah.
Where do
And
we
we'll
go
be
next,
over
Michelle?
on Twitter. So we'll say goodbye to our LinkedIn and our YouTube viewers, and we'll stop the broadcast, but we'll be on Twitter so people can come and ask us questions or have a bit further a chat. So
LinkedIn, YouTube,
goodbye
we
to,
thank you guys for
yeah,
joining us. We'll see you on
bye-bye.
Twitter Spaces right now for anyone who can. Cheers.
Bye.